Hey everybody, welcome to Take 5. Today I want to talk to you about recordings. Now, I've talked before about us recording interviews. This isn't about that. This is about what do you do when you're conducting an investigation and somebody wants to provide you with a recording. So for example, I'm doing a workplace investigation and the complainant says, well, I have it all on tape. I have all kinds of stuff on tape. I want to give you these recordings. What do you as an investigator do with these recordings? Should you even be looking at these recordings or listening to these recordings? You know, there are a lot of pitfalls around this area. And the first thing an investigator needs to do when somebody says to them that they have recordings is to do your due diligence around understanding how these recordings came to be. In other words, where did this person get this recording? Did they record it? Were they part of the conversation? Did they record people without their knowledge and without them being a part of the conversation? These are important determinants around the legality of the recording. For example, if I make a recording of a conversation that I'm engaged in, there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing illegal about that. Some might say there's something wrong with that from a moral or ethical perspective, and that's a whole other argument. But from a legal perspective, there's nothing wrong with me recording a conversation I'm in. But if I leave a recording device in a room or around some people and I walk away and then I record them without their knowledge, well, now I've committed a criminal act. So as investigators, we need to understand where these recordings came from. And it opens a whole can of worms around other problems. Like, for example, the person says to you, well, I was part of it. And you know, I was in that conversation. So I'm saying, okay, well, that's information I'd like to hear. So I'm going to take that recording. I'm going to listen to it. Can I use it as part of the investigation? Should I? You know, I would argue yes. I think that if somebody has, you know, there's a whole other issue of whether, say, for example, in a workplace setting, was it appropriate for someone to record a conversation? And that's a whole other issue. But if I'm doing say, for example, a harassment investigation or a discrimination investigation, and the person has recorded evidence legally obtained, albeit maybe against the policy of the organization, again, another issue to deal with, but they've legally obtained this recording, and that's evidence. Well, it's not evidence I can ignore exists. I have to utilize that evidence, and I think I have a duty to use it. I also have a duty to inform the other party in the investigation that I have a recording, and perhaps give them an opportunity to hear it and speak to it and explain themselves as part of what's in that recording. Now, again, if the recording's obtained illegally, we're into a whole different kettle of fish. If it's an illegally obtained recording, I don't want to hear it. I don't want anything to do with it. And that begs the question, do I now have an obligation to notify the other party that an illegal recording was taken of them? I don't have to put the label illegal on it, but you know, I have to explain myself. I have to explain, why am I using this recording or not using this recording? And if it's illegally obtained, I don't want to use it. Right. And, you know, that could have a whole other set of consequences. And we've had cases like this where, you know, I have said to a person, listen, you broke the law in making that recording. You know, I think you need to go get some independent legal advice now around those actions. You know, irrespective of what it is we're investigating, we'll still investigate the original allegations that were made. But you know, whether or not we can use that recording is a different story. So there's no real easy answers here on their whole recording front. It's one of those things that, you know, I think we all just have to give a lot of very careful attention to. I know investigators have been criticized for not utilizing recordings, and they've, you know, been criticized for utilizing recordings. There's no clear right or wrong answer around this, but I do think it all starts with understanding the origin of the recording. Where did it come from? Who recorded it? How did they get it? Were they part of the conversation? Was it a legal or illegal recording to make? And then we start to build our decision-making process from there. Okay, we've decided that it was legal for them to do it. Maybe it violated a policy in the organization. Well, violating a policy or not, we have a recording that will potentially be clear-cut evidence of some sort of violation. You know, I think we may have an ethical obligation to use the recording. Again, you know, these are the kinds of situations where I think, you know, more heads involved in the decision making is important. So as investigators, we would typically involve legal counsel around some of these decisions to talk about, okay, what are the rights and wrongs here? What are the things we should be thinking about? What is the case law? I mean, we can look all that up, but it's always a good idea to have other people. Decisions like this should never be unilateral. As an investigator, you need to be cautious. You need to think it through, think of the consequences of what you do, and then decide what's your actions going to be. So, not an easy one. I don't have clear-cut information for you on this one. I just think it's something we all need to make ourselves aware of as workplace and regulatory investigators, because this happens on the regulatory side just as often as it happens on the workplace side. And we really need to know what the appropriate actions are to take with these things. So a little twist on the Take 5 today, because I'm not being quite so opinionated, and instead just sharing some thoughts and things that I think we all need to keep exploring and considering as we move forward. So with that, thanks for listening, and I'll see you next time on Take 5.